What's happening, everybody? Trey here, joined again by my dad, Sean, and today on Reactions to the Classics, we're going to be taking a look at Deep Purple's classic record, Machine Head. Gotta be honest, I don't know any Deep Purple tracks.
I know, I didn't know any Deep Purple track. I knew a riff, but I didn't know the song.
Same here. I knew the famous riff on Smoke on the Water, but that was it. And if this is your first time joining us at the channel, we appreciate you stopping by. Here at Reactions to the Classics, we take a look back at some of the most classic albums of all time, do a detailed track-by-track review of them, and just like today, it's usually the first time we've heard the record. So if that sounds like something interesting to you, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button, and if you'd like to link up with us more, we have our Facebook and Patreon down below. But let's just dive into this thing.
All right, this is their 6th studio album, recorded in March 1972, in only 3 weeks. We'll get into that story later on. Their most successful commercial album by far, went to #1 in the UK, stayed in the top 40 over there for 20 weeks, went to #7 in the US, and stayed on the US album charts for 118 weeks, which was quite the accomplishment back then when everything was album driven. This album in particular, Trey, is often cited as an early influence on the heavy metal genre. Only 7 songs, so let's get to it.
Well, our first track is Highway Star. This is the fastest tempo song on the record. It has a classically inspired guitar solo as well as an organ solo that John Lord, the keyboardist, said was inspired by Bach.
Yeah, and Lord just shines on this whole album, dude. He is unbelievable. But what happened is they were on a tour bus. The reporters were with them because that's the way they did it back then for a lot of these bands. In 1971, they were on their way to Portsmouth, and a reporter asked them, how do you guys write a song? So they said, well, you know what? We'll just show you. Richie Blackmore, the guitarist, grabbed an acoustic guitar and began playing a riff consisting of a single G repeated over and over, while Ian Gillan, the lead singer, improvised lyrics over the top. The song was performed that night. Okay, they fine-tuned it a little bit, but what an amazing story of here's how we do it. This song for me is my favorite song on here. I know it's not the most famous song. It's about a car and 4 verses long, and all the songs on here, guys, you're not coming here for deep lyrics. Not that the lyrics are bad, but you're coming here for the instrumentation, which is just next level, and I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, the instrumentation was a highlight for me. As you mentioned, the guy loves to just be on the open road with his car. It's like heaven to him, and the organ solo was fantastic, as well as that guitar solo, just played at a blistering speed. It's heavy from the first note, and it was a perfect way to start off the record and let us know what we're in for, and then that transitioned us nicely into the next track, Maybe I'm a Leo. Glover said that he wrote the riff after hearing Lennon's How Do You Sleep. He liked the idea that the riff didn't start on the downbeat like 99% of riffs do.
They've taken his girl away and he is sad. He may be a Leo, but he ain't a lion. Nice repeating guitar riff on this, just like it's gonna be a broken record for me.
It had a little bit of a funk hinge to it as well, which differentiated it a little bit from the rest of the record, and I think it's something that some people can relate to. Just, oh man, he did something to upset his girl and now he wants her back to comfort him, but it's not gonna happen.
Not gonna happen. One of the shortest tracks on here as well.
Yeah, and then that takes us to the next song.
Pictures of Home begins with a drum introduction by Pace and features a fast-paced driving guitar riff and bass line with several instrumental solos and a distinct distorted Hammond organ by Lord. Man, that organ stands out on this song like nothing else.
Blackmore said that he was inspired by a shortwave radio channel whenever he was writing the riff. Probably, he said, from like Turkey or Bulgaria.
Yeah.
And here I enjoyed it because we had each member had their chance to shine. We had a bass solo, which usually songs don't have.
Right.
And then we had a characteristic guitar solo as well as an organ solo. Great drum fill to start off the record. I like the imagery in the song too. There's a line in there, here in this prison of my own making, year after day I have grown into a hero, but there's no worship. Where have they hidden my throne? And a lot of the song deals with themes of paranoia and some loneliness.
Yeah. It ends with 1:40 of just instrumental stuff. So usually you don't see that on the outro, that long of an outro. It sets the pace of letting you know that this band is about the instrumentation. It's not just about the lyrics. And you know, I like that. It makes them a real band. Next up is Never Before. It was released as a single, went to #35 in the UK. The guitar riff, Trey, sounds a lot like Peter Frampton's Do You Feel Like We Do?
And here, essentially, this woman, another girl problem here.
Hey guys, it happens, right?
They were, from what I can tell from the lyrics, they were married. And
yeah,
then,
she even took my name. That's what I kind of got out of it too.
Yeah, and they ended up getting divorced. She says she took my name. She took my heart, and she threw away my soul.
She took it all, man. You got to watch out for those women, boys.
So I enjoyed this one. Didn't stick out to me maybe as much as the other tracks, but still a fine tune nonetheless. But I think it's hurt because it comes before this next legendary song, the Smoke on the Water.
One of the most famous guitar riffs of all time.
Oh, yeah, and I didn't actually know the song itself, but I knew this riff.
I didn't either, but I knew the riff. It is number 434 in the Rolling Stones Top 500 Greatest Songs of All Time. Number 4 in Total Guitar Magazine's Greatest Guitar Riffs Ever. The single propelled the album to the top 10. It's known for and recognizable by its central theme developed by Blackmore. 4-note blues scale melody in G minor harmonized in parallel fourths. The riff, which is played on a Fender Stratocaster electric guitar by Blackmore, is later joined by hi-hat and distorted organ and the rest of the drums, then the electric bass parts, before the start of Gillan's vocal. Blackmore later claimed the riff is an interpretation of Inversion of Symphony No. 5 by Beethoven. Lord doubles the guitar part on a Hammond organ played through a distorted Marshall amp, creating a tone very similar to that of the guitar, which we watched an interview with Blackmore, and he was talking about people giving him a hard time because it's a very simple chord to play. A lot of beginning guitarists play it. It actually is in the Guinness Book of World Records for simultaneous guitar solos. It's been broken 4 times, all to this Smoke on the Water riff. But Blackmore said once he mentioned that it was inspired by Beethoven, people backed off him a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And I really thought it was just propelled the song great at the start because, as you mentioned, it's nice. The bass joins in after the riff plays once and the riff goes again. We get the drums, and then finally we get Gillan coming in with the lyrics. And the story here was pretty neat because it essentially tells the story of the making of the record you're listening to at that moment.
Yeah, it does. And here's the deal. They went to Montreux, a casino, and they were going to start recording. They had the Rolling Stones mobile studio, which everybody seemed to in the early 70s. They were going to record this album, and the night before there was a concert there. Frank Zappa was there, and somebody shot a flare gun up and burning the whole casino to the ground.
And this was the last concert before they were
going to shut down for the winter.
Yeah.
Burned it to the ground. They had nowhere to record the album, so they go all over Montreux, and they finally find somewhere to record it, and this is the finished product. But he tells the story about Zappa being there, about some idiot firing off the flare gun, burns it to the ground. So that's kind of how Smoke on the Water. It's an actual real-life telling of how the album was made, as you said. So that part of it really stuck out to me. It really tells a story.
Yeah, and this would have to be my favorite just for how, I mean, you can't help but headbang a little bit.
Yeah, it's right up there with me.
When you hear that riff. And so, great track, and then we go into track number 6. And this starts out as an instrumental with Lord playing an overdriven Hammond organ intro, and that's followed by the main riff and the solo swaps between him and Blackmore. They just synergize so well throughout this whole record. I know you just talked about it on Smoke on the Water, how that organ and guitar is not usually 2 instruments you think would
never
synergize so well, but since Blackmore and Lord are so good at their respective instruments, it works.
Yeah, it's 4 minutes and 20 seconds at the start before there's ever any vocals. Like the first time I listened to it, I hadn't done any research, and like
it's over 7 minutes long.
Yeah, they're gonna ever say, it's the longest song on here. I like it. It's about someone who's lazy, and he's singing to who's lazy. I mean, maybe this person's depressed. I don't know. I couldn't exactly. I'd like to know who he was singing to. I couldn't find where he ever said it, but an interesting track to say the least.
Yeah, exactly, and you even have some harmonica in
here.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
they threw everything in the kitchen sink here, and I tend to think the guy maybe was a little bit depressed, or maybe he was just down on the world. Who knows? Like to just lounge around, don't like to do work.
Don't like to do work. Trey, you know what helps with depression?
What's that?
You do a little space trucking, and that's what we're going to do to close this album out. They wanted to do a track about trucking, and then they decided, you know what? What's better than space trucking? So they're going to go to Venus, to Mars.
To all these different places.
Yeah, it's an interesting lyrical content, to say the least.
I mean, early 70s you had David Bowie's Space Oddity, of course, Elton John's Rocket Man. So space was a popular topic.
It was, and they went head on into it.
And I enjoyed the way this ended off the entire entire record. And I like that Gillan almost had some more screamed, harsh, intense vocals here. It was something that he didn't really play out in the rest of the record, but he saved it here as the song kind of comes up to a climax.
And one of the little fun facts about this, they love to play it live. It's usually over 20 minutes long. Blackmore would put his guitar solos between a quiet one and then he'd get after it. When he got after it, he usually smashed his guitar or started on fire. At a concert in California, he did it even better. He started on fire, then he smashed it, then he started the amp on fire and it blew up. So there you go. So
hey, that's the way to end off.
Yeah, you don't want to be in the first front row for a Deep Purple concert back then, but I thought that was great. So that kind of brings us to our favorite tracks.
Yeah, for me, it'd have to be Smoke on the Water was my favorite, and I also really enjoyed Highway Star. I know those are the two most famous tracks, but those were really sick. And I mean, Space Truckin' too stood out.
Yeah, me too. I'll go with those. You know, Space Truckin' for me would be third on that list. But the thing with Deep Purple is this. Like I said at the start, you're not coming here for lyrics. So the lyrics aren't bad, but the instrumentation's next level. Blackmore and Lord in particular are just tremendous. And this is a nice surprise for me. You know, like I said, it's one of the fathers of heavy metal. And for me, I'm going to give this thing a 7.75.
No, I'm kind of right there with you going into this. I mean, this isn't a style of music that I normally listen to, so I was kind of on the fence, like, I wonder how this is gonna sound. But once I got into it, I was like, okay, these guys rock, man. They're pretty heavy. You can kind of see how some of the later bands that we reviewed, like AC/DC, Boston, took a heavy influence, I think, from these guys, and of course other heavy metal bands through time. So I'm going to be right there with you in that 7.75 range. Very solid record. It was succinct, 7 tracks.
The length of it's about 40 minutes or so. So it's not a short album, but only 7 tracks just makes it feel that way. You go on a quick little journey. And I'll say that when you're a pioneer in a genre, I realize they weren't the first, but they're one of the pioneers. You don't have the advantage that these later bands you mentioned do of going back, going, oh, I'm going to copy this and do this and do this. So when they're out there like that, it takes some guts, and that's why I gave it the grade I did.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, and let us know what you think of Machine Head in the comments below. Your favorite track, as always, Dad. I appreciate
pleasure.
The research, and if you enjoy this video, y'all, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. We upload multiple times a week in a variety of genres, and until next time, happy listening. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see ya.